Now, while we spoke about naturals and synthetic, we didn't speak about artisanal. Now, artisanal are people or brands that make fragrances purely out of natural elements. That's why they are going to be skyrocketingly high expensive for the smallest volume, but they are made of actual deer musk or actual ambergris or or actual what do you call that, vetiver and all of that, right? So artisanal fragrances are very very expensive. So you have your designers, you have your niche, and then you have your artisanal houses which make very very rare, low amount, low quantity fragrances which are very expensive because they go after completely 100% natural elements in making in fragrances, right? Now, the next part that we'll talk about are things like, first of all, what are things to avoid? Okay. Now, typically, you would see a lot of ads in India today talking about, this fragrance is 8,000 rupees. I'm selling it for 3,000 rupees. Do not buy because that's a fake. That's a first copy. They would get you original bottles like this, but filled with duplicate, juice like on Amazon and all of that. It happens. So be very careful. Do not buy. Second, you see a lot of clone houses, featuring, fragrances for this. Again, be very careful. Do not buy every random house that's available because it's my own neighbors are cooking and the whistles have started. Now this will go on for a long time, right? Now don't buy brands that you just see on Instagram, especially because there are a lot of brands trying to promote clones and all of that. So be very careful. Take opinion of a couple of people before you buy. A good way to do that would be to come on to let's say Facebook groups on and get in touch with fragheads or get in touch with reviewers whom you trust and probably take their opinion. That might help you a lot because many brands try to advertise and all of that, and most of them are really really bad. The ones that don't are actually have got good fragrances, but they don't really do a lot of marketing, right? So like for example, I would recommend rather is houses like Afia, Al Maham, Centedelic, Muzna, Yasmin, Maven Perfumery, Arabian Sense. These are like pretty good in their alt making processes, and these are brands that I would say that you can kind of vouch and try and buy because you typically don't have a lot of bad experiences in terms of skin or lasting or delivery or payment related issues. Most of these are pretty good and they have a good fan following as well. So there are people who buy their fragrances and use them. Now, some other things to understand is how to build a collection of fragrance. Now, a good way to start is buying samples like 2 ml, 3 ml samples, or going for 10 ml samples or 20 mls, and then trying and seeing if that works for you, and then getting the full-fledged bottle. Another way would be to get partials. Now I get a lot of times I get partials like this which are 40% in volume from a dealer called as Vinay, who is of exclusive scents, because for me that works. And a lot of times in Facebook groups and all of that, people sell their existing fragrances because they want to buy something new, they want money for another fragrance. So like this for example, you get them at partials, right? Because this is a process of growing fragrances for one person to get rid of the one that they have, and for you it's easy to buy something at a lower price and use. So I think I got this for about 800 rupees or so, and this has been with me for more than a year, and I've hardly used maybe 10 ml of it, because when you have more than 100 fragrances or so, you don't typically use a lot of them, right? So getting partials is also a good option. What are decants? Now decants are basically fragrances that somebody like me, let's say, who have got a full bottle like this. Now I don't have, or I don't need the entire bottle. Also I need money to buy new fragrances. So I would typically take the atomizer off and then use a syringe to extract perfume from this and put it in smaller vials and sell it to other people. Now that is decants. Okay. Now you will also find a lot of good people who do decants as well. So for example, Fragzone, Anwar Bai is a good person who does decants. Sovik Patra, good options to buy decants, because decanting is a good option for you to experiment and know which fragrance is good for you. So you can always buy decants and then try it and then use it, right? Let me show you some decants like this, right? So this is a decant. Okay, this is a 3 ml vial. So this is a 10 ml vial. So these are good options to get. Sometimes even fragrance brands like in this case, this is Hamad Al Maghrabi's, this is Muzna, this is Ahmad, this is leather. So they actually have official vials that are kind of sold like this. Now this is, for example, 2 ml, and this is about, I think, 120 rupees. You should get this. So instead of buying a 4,500 rupees bottle, blind buying that, this is a good way of trying something and getting to understand if this fragrance is for you. And these are official vials. Similarly, you also get all the brands that sell official vials like this as well, right? So typically you will have these are Montals. I have quite a few from many brands. So like this is Dolce and Gabbana King. So I kind of get these also sometimes for my use cases. So it depends, right? So whatever you want, you can kind of get. So that is another way of getting to experiment fragrances. Now let's talk about let's talk about one common thing. How do I wear fragrance? Okay, how do you wear a fragrance? Now, typically, what happens, I've seen people is that they would take a deo, they would put on deo continuously on their body and then take perfume and put on top. And this is something that I also, as a beginner, made this mistake. Now, if you do this, what happens? Your deo is generally going to overpower the fragrance that you have. One. Second is, let's say your deo is a woody fragrance, but you put on a fresh scent and this is totally contradictory. So the person who's sniffing you doesn't really know what you're wearing and your expensive fragrance doesn't smell right. Now, so how do you fix this? So what is the best way to go about? So there are two things that you can do. One is get something from Amazon like this called the unscented deo. Okay, now this is a deo stick, which is basically that you put under your armpits and all of that. What happens with this is this doesn't have any odor to it, doesn't have any smell to it. So this will not cause any intrusion between the fragrance that you have, and in this way your body odor doesn't come at the same time your fragrance works well. Now the problem with this is about 300 rupees for a bar like this, and I think it goes up to 1600 1800 rupees for a very good quality one. Alternatively is for you to get something from Nivea, either this or Fresh or whatever. These are really good. These are cheap also. I think a set of 3 of this is about 450 rupees, I think so. And it for me, typically if I go to office, let's say about for 15 to 20 days in a month, most of the time I use this every day. So I would say 25 days or in a month also, if I use this, it still lasts me about good 2 months time, and this will cost you only about 150 rupees. So this is very good. So you apply this, then you apply your fragrance. Or if your fragrance comes with a deo, like certain cases fragrances come with a deo, in that case you can go with deo and the fragrance, no problem. But otherwise, I would say this is a good way to apply fragrance. Now the last part is to how many sprays and where do I spray? Okay. Now how many sprays is typically very judgmental. It can be very individual. It could be totally about your skin, your way of putting fragrances. For me, typically it is, let's say for example, if I'm trying something like this, or let's say, let me take Afro Leather. Okay. So if I'm trying a fragrance like this, is typically 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then you can go maybe 2 on your lower part of your garment. So that's about 10 sprays. That's a good way to go about. That is, in my case, a very reasonable way of putting it, because then in that case, your arms are covered, your chest area is covered, your back is covered, okay, and a little part of your tummy, that kind of side is also covered. So, when you walk and all of that, the sillage, projection, all of that is kind of, taken care of. Now, what happens is, if you are somebody who wants to do 16 sprays, 20 sprays. Now, what happens when you do a lot of sprays is your nose starts getting used to this, and unless you do 20-25 sprays, your nose can't smell anything. Okay, so the fragrance might be really good, but your nose has come to a point where it can't take fragrances beyond that, or above that threshold, or it has to have that threshold. It's like alcohol or smoking or any of those habits, right? So if you're used to having like 10 cigarettes a day, if you try doing less than that, your body feels very uneasy that day, that something is not right. Similarly, fragrances too, there's no point in putting 15, 20, 40 sprays of something just because you are not able to smell it. It basically means if you're going to be somebody like who wants beast mode fragrance all the time, and you put on a lot of sprays, eventually it's going to give you problems where your nose is only going to take that many kind of fragrances, okay, or that high amount of fragrances, because your nose is not able to smell any of it, right? So typically I would say be around, I'm a sissy sprayer, to be very honest. I do about 5-6 sprays on most days. This 10 is is an exception. I generally don't go for such high level of sprays. 5-6 sprays is good for me. 8 sprays is very average for me. 10-12 is very high when I go for some occasion or something like that. But again, like I said, many factors. I live in Bangalore. The climate is generally typically very good. Evenings are very soft. So I don't do a lot of outdoor things. So for me, this is okay. If you're somebody in a lot of crowd, you lot of humidity, high heat, all of that, then typically you need more sprays. Again, you can try for yourself. See what works for you, but typically it's not really required to wear a lot of sprays. Okay. Now, another part to talk about, there are three things that a lot of people look for. What is projection? What is lasting? Okay, what is longevity, in other words, right? So projection is what, when you put on a fragrance, how far are you able to smell it, or till where can you smell it, right? Typically any fragrance that you wear will have 1 to 1.5 feet. 2 feet is loud. 2.5 to 3 feet, I would say, is beast mode kind of a fragrance, because at 3 feet and above, if somebody is able to smell, that fragrance is super loud and beast mode. That is in terms of how it projects. In some cases, projection also can be referred as how long does it project in terms of duration. Some fragrances do 20 minutes, some fragrances do 40 minutes, some fragrances do 1 hour, 1.5 hour. Very rarely that 40 minutes and above is very, very rare. So that's another way of looking at fragrances. How long do they project, okay, in terms of duration, right? Last thing is basically how long is it on your skin. How long can you smell it? Like 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, on apparels, like I said, 8 to 10 hours, that's your lasting. So that is pretty much that. And the last option is, of course, sillage. Now, sillage is what? When you walk, right? What is the trail that you get of this particular fragrance? Like, while projection is forward, I would say sillage is backward, right? So if you've gone by and then, or a person has walked by and then you can smell fragrance, that's a good sillage, a fragrance that leaves good sillage. That is what is, understood by that word, right? I think by and large, we've covered almost everything that I could think about fragrances, and fragrance related basics as such. If there is anything else that needs to be covered, do let me know in comments. I'll be happy to do. What I will try and do, because this video has already hit in terms of audio and exactly an hour and above, I think it will be close to an hour. So I will try and break this down to maybe 4 or 5 episodes, in the playlist, and then you can watch one by one, so that it's not very boring. And if you like this video and if you think this is insightful and if you need more information around about this, do let me know, and I can kind of figure out something else, or we can build more fragrance related videos. So on that note, I thank you very much for watching this. You're watching the Perfume Experience. My name is Rodney. Take care. Bye now.